This tale commences with a 50-year-old man who was married to a beautiful woman and also owned a bakery. One day, a couple comes to live next to his house. He goes to see them, and that day he talked to Gemma for the first. Next day, Gemma comes to buy something from his bakery, and the man named Joe was really shocked to see her at his place. Gemma was looking really beautiful that day. These two talk to each other just for a couple of minutes, and then Next day, when Joe is asleep at his home, Gemma's husband comes to see him and says, "We do not have light in our home. Could you help us to fix it?" He goes to their home and in no time fixes their light. After that, he stays at their home for a while. When they all were talking, Joe was just continuously staring at Gemma. She was looking really gorgeous. That day, for the first time, he felt like he's in love with her. Next day, Gemma once again comes to his bakery, but this time she was alone. She tells Joe that your bread is really tasty. Then he says, "If you really like it, then I can teach you how to bake it." After hearing that, Gemma smiles and goes to the kitchen of the bakery with him. There she starts making the bread, and Joe tries to get close to her. While they were talking, Gemma removes some of her clothes because she was not feeling comfortable, and Joe was just continuously staring at her body. After a few days, when Joe was going somewhere, he sees Gemma walking toward him. They both talk to each other for a while and leave. Within a minute, Gemma feels intense pain in her back. She called Joe to come to help her, and Joe quickly runs back to her. She says, "There is a bug in my clothes. Could you help me get it out?" Joe quickly opens her buttons and puts his hand in her clothes. He grabs the bug and pulls it out. But then he says, "This bug was poisonous. Its venom can spread into your body in no time. I got to suck out that venom from your back by my mouth." Gemma says, "Do whatever you have to, but please just do it." When he was sucking venom out of her back, she passed out and fell on the ground. Now Joe was really scared. He quickly grabs Gemma and runs to the hospital. Doctors give her some medicine and let her go home. But still, she was not very well. When they were in the car, she gets really close to Joe and falls asleep in his lap. Joe was really happy and continuously smiling because his dream girl was sleeping in his lap. And then he drops Gemma at her house. After a few days, he sees Gemma going somewhere in the market, and then he sees another boy who is following her. That boy slowly comes to her and tries to talk to her. Joe was really getting jealous looking both of them and talking and then he sees that boy is holding her hand and trying to impress her. After a while, they both go home. Few days later, Gemma meets that boy once again in a shop. He talked to her for a while, and then he invites her to his house for lunch. She could not refuse and says yes. Next day, when she was on her way to the boy's home, Joe sees her going that way. He was kind of shocked why she went in there. He kept waiting for a really long time right in front of the house, but when she did not come out, so he went home. At night, when they all were having dinner together, he sees a mark on Gemma's neck. Now he finally knew that Gemma was having romance with that boy in his house. Joe was really upset because the girl he was in love with was having an affair with someone else who she just. A couple of days ago, Joe walks out of the house without saying a word. Next day, he sees Gemma once again sneaking out of his home in the morning. He knew where she was going, but could not do anything about it. Gemma goes straight to the boy's home, where these two keep kissing each other in romance. All day, she spent all night dancing and enjoying her moments with this boy. Next day, she comes to buy some bread from his bakery, but forget one of her packages right there. That's why Joe goes to her home, just to give her that package back. When he reached there, he sees there is a boy in the house. He quickly hides behind those two were having romance together. That's why Joe tries to listen to what they are talking about by hiding behind the window. That boy says to Gemma that I am really in love with you. And she says the same thing to him. Joe was really upset and angry because he himself loved Gemma so much that he could not stop thinking about her. But now someone else was taking his place. He goes to his home and stays up all night thinking about her. Those two were really in love with each other. They were seeing each other almost every other day. Whenever they get the chance, she always comes to see him to romance. After a few days, she gets a letter. That boy sends her that letter in which he says, "Now I cannot see you anymore because I am going home to Paris forever." She wanted to talk to that boy, but she was so hurt that she only went halfway to. Gemma was so heartbroken that she did not even talk to her own husband for weeks. Then one day her husband tells her that I am going to London for a few months. Then Gemma says, "Why? What happened? Why you are going alone and leaving me here?" Then he says, "You are not talking to me for weeks. Now you want to talk to me." He was so angry that he leaves without saying a word to her. Gemma cried the whole night because nothing was making her happy. Now she was completely alone in her home. One day, Joe comes to see her. She was so depressed that she asked him to sit with her for a while. He comes inside and gives her company. When she was giving him a cup of tea, he was continuously staring at her body. After that, she comes and sits really close to him. Joe was having the best moment of his life. Exactly what he was always been dreaming about. Next day, she asked Joe once again to come to her home. When they were talking with each other, then Joe mistakenly says something about her boyfriend. She was shocked. "How come he knows about my boyfriend?" Then he says, "I really do not like you, keep crying all the time." Gemma asks him not to interfere in my life because I can handle my life by myself. He says, "I know I do not need to interfere in your life, but I really care about you, and I always will." Gemma really loved the way Joe feels about her, and then she goes to him and kisses him. Joe was really happy that he finally had his first kiss with her. He goes to his bakery right away and bakes a cake for her. He also wrote Gemma's name on it. Later, he put it right in front of her door. Someone comes to see Gemma at her home, and he says, "Someone has left it at your door." She looked at that cake and kept smiling. Then they both go inside and start talking. But when she ate a piece of that cake, she started choking. The cake was stuck in her throat. The man was trying to help her from the back so that the piece of cake could come out. Suddenly, her husband comes back. He sees both of them in such a weird position that he thinks the man is trying to hurt his wife. That's why he gets really mad and pulls him away from Gemma. They both start fighting with each other. Her husband had no idea. While he was fighting outside, Gemma was choking inside. Within a minute, she fell on the ground and died. Subscribe for more related videos.